Have you ever caught yourself saying, I'd love to start my own business, but maybe it's I don't have enough money, I don't have enough experience, and I don't have the right idea. Or perhaps I'll do it one day, just not yet. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, I think almost every entrepreneur has said those exact words at some point. The difference is this: some people eventually decide to challenge those thoughts. Others spend years believing them, and before they know it, 5 years have passed, 10 years have passed, and the ambition they once felt so excited about slowly becomes something they only ever think about. Not because they weren't capable, and not because they weren't talented, but because they believed myths that were never true in the first place. Over the last few years, I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of entrepreneurs. I've also built businesses of my own. Some have gone exactly as I'd hoped, others have taught me lessons the hard way. More recently, through Ambition to Achieve, I've been sitting down with entrepreneurs from all kinds of industries and asking them about their journeys. And what fascinates me is that although every business is different, the reason people tell themselves for not starting is always the same. And that's exactly what I want to talk about in today's video. Because if you've got an ambition to build something of your own, whether it's a business, a side hustle, or turning a passion into an income, I don't want these myths to stop you before you've even begun. So today we're going to separate fact from fiction. We're going to challenge some of the biggest misconceptions about starting a business. And by the end of this video, I hope you'll realise that the biggest thing standing between where you are today and where you could be might just be a story you've been telling yourself. Welcome to Ambition to Achieve. If you're new here, my name's Rob, and this channel is all about helping people turn ambition into action. Every week, I have the privilege of meeting and interviewing entrepreneurs from a huge range of industries. Some are just starting out, while others have built successful businesses over many years. Alongside that, I spend my working life supporting entrepreneurs to develop their ideas, overcome challenges, and grow their businesses. One thing has become incredibly clear to me: the people who succeed aren't always the smartest, they aren't always the richest, and they aren't always the most experienced, and they certainly aren't always the most confident. What they do have is the ability to move forward despite uncertainty. They understand that there will never be a perfect time to start. Now, before we go any further, I want to make something really clear. This isn't one of those videos that's going to tell you starting a business is easy, because it isn't. There will be long days, there will be setbacks, and there will be mistakes. There will be moments where you question yourself and wonder whether you're doing the right thing. Every entrepreneur experiences those moments. But here's the interesting part: most people never even get to those challenges. So we ask ourselves why? Because they're stopped long before they begin. Not by a lack of ability, not by a lack of opportunity, but by myths, ideas they've heard from other people, assumptions they've made, stories they've repeated to themselves so many times that they begin to believe they're facts. So in today's video, it's about breaking those myths apart one by one. Some of them might surprise you, some of them might make you uncomfortable, and some of them might be the very reason you've never taken that first step. And my hope is that by the end of this video, you'll stop waiting for the perfect circumstances and start seeing what's actually possible. Because your ambition deserves more than one day. It deserves a chance. So let's start with one of the biggest myths of them all. Let's start with a myth I probably hear more than any other. I'm just waiting for the right idea, or someone else has already done it, or even when I think of something completely unique, then I'll start my business. It sounds sensible, doesn't it? But it's one of the biggest misconceptions in entrepreneurship. Here's the truth: the vast majority of successful businesses weren't built on ideas that nobody had ever thought of before. They were built by doing something differently. Think about it. How many coffee shops are there? How many plumbers, electricians, photographers, hairdressers, personal trainers, restaurants? There are thousands, probably millions across the world. So why do new ones keep opening? Because people don't just buy products or services, they buy from people. They buy trust, they buy personality, they buy experience, and they buy convenience. And they buy from businesses they connect with. I've met entrepreneurs who worried that their idea wasn't original enough. Then they launched anyway. Do you know what happened? They found customers, not because they reinvented the wheel, but because they solved the problem well. I actually think waiting for the perfect idea can become a form of procrastination. It feels productive because you're thinking, you're researching, you're making notes, and you're telling yourself you're preparing. But preparation can become a hiding place. Months turn into years, the notebook fills up, and the ideas keep changing, and nothing ever really gets launched. Here's something I'd encourage you to think about. Instead of asking yourself, has anyone ever done this before? Ask yourself, can I do this better? Or can I do this differently? Or even perhaps, can I serve a group of people who aren't being served well enough? Those questions are far more powerful, because business isn't about being first, it's about creating value. And here's something I've learned after speaking to so many entrepreneurs. Very few of them started with the business they have today. Their original ideas just evolved. They listened to their customers, they adapted and they improved and they changed direction. So in other words, the business became better because they started, not before they started. So even if you're sitting there waiting for the perfect idea, maybe it's time to stop waiting and start with a good idea. Start with an idea that solves a problem, and start with an idea you're passionate enough to explore, because perfection isn't the starting point, action is. And more often than not, the perfect idea only starts to reveal itself once you've had the courage to begin. Now, let's move on to another myth that stops thousands of people before they've even taken the first step. I'd love to start a business, but I just don't have the money. It is a genuine concern, and I'm certainly not going to stand here and tell you that money doesn't matter. Of course it does. Some businesses need equipment and premises and stock and licenses or insurance. But here's where I think people get it wrong. They assume they need all the money before they can begin. In reality, many successful businesses started incredibly small. Some began from a spare bedroom, some from a kitchen table, and some from a garage. Some with nothing more than a laptop and a mobile phone. The entrepreneur didn't wait until everything was perfect. They looked at what they already had and asked themselves, what's the smallest version of this business I can start today? I love that question because it changes your mindset completely. Instead of focusing on everything you don't have, you start recognizing everything that you do have. Maybe you already have the skills, and maybe you already have the experience. Maybe you already know the first 10 potential customers, and maybe you've already got the equipment sitting in your house. One of the biggest lessons in business is learning to be resourceful. And resourcefulness will often take you further than having a big budget. I've met entrepreneurs who built fantastic businesses without huge investments because they focused on solving problems, building relationships and reinvesting what they earned. They didn't try to build the finished version of their business on day one. They just built version 1 and then evolved to version 2 and then evolution into version 3. And they just did it step by step. Too many people compare their day 1 to somebody else's year 10. They look at an established business with a professional website, a large team, beautiful branding and impressive premises and think, I could never compete with that. But they forget that those businesses started somewhere too. And every successful business has a beginning, every entrepreneur has a first customer, and every business has a first sale. The important thing isn't whether you can afford to build your dream business today. The important question is, can you afford not to start? Because they're two very different things. If the answer is yes, even if it's small, then perhaps that's all you need. Don't let the size of your ambition stop you from taking that first step. Because big businesses aren't built in a day. They're built on one decision, one customer, and one lesson at a time. And often, the biggest investment you can make at the beginning isn't money at all. It's believing enough in yourself to get started. This is probably one of the most dangerous myths out there. You'll often hear people say, if you're serious about your business, you'll quit your job and you'll go all in. It sounds bold and brave, it even sounds inspiring. But for most people, it simply is not realistic. Most of us have responsibilities, we have mortgages, rent, bills, children and families who depend on us. Walking away from a regular income isn't always the smartest decision. In fact, I'd argue that for many people, keeping your full-time job while building your business is one of the best decisions you can make. Why? Because it takes the pressure off. So when your wages are covering the bills, your business has the space to grow naturally. You don't have to panic if you don't make a sale this week, and you don't have to say yes to work that isn't right for you just because you need the money. You can focus on building something sustainable instead of chasing short-term survival. Now, I'll be honest with you, building a business alongside the full-time job isn't easy. There are evenings when you're tired, weekends when you'd rather switch off, and moments when you wonder if all the effort is worth it. I know that because I'm living it too. I'm building ambition to achieve alongside a full-time job. That means recording videos after work, interviewing entrepreneurs on days off, and editing content and planning future projects and managing the social media, all while balancing family life and everything else that comes with it. Some days it's exhausting, but every small step moves me closer to where I want to be. And that's the mindset I want you to encourage you to adopt. You don't have to build your entire business this month. You just have to keep building it 1 hour today, a couple of hours at the weekend, one conversation, one customer, and just one improvement. Over time, all those small actions begin to compound, and before you know it, you've built something real. The truth is, there isn't a prize for quitting your job the fastest. The goal isn't to look like an entrepreneur. The goal is to build a successful, sustainable business. And if that means keeping your full-time job while you create something you're proud of, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, it might be the smartest business decision you'll ever make. And remember this, don't compare your journey to someone else's highlight reel. Build at a pace that works for your life, because slow progress is still progress, and every hour you invest in your ambition today is an investment in the future you're trying to create. Now here's another myth that quietly holds so many people back. I'll start when I know a bit more. I just need to do one more course. I need to spend a few more months researching. On the surface, that sounds sensible. After all, surely the more you know, the better prepared you'll be. To a point, that's true. Now, learning is important and research is important, and understanding your market is important. But there comes a point where learning stops being preparation and starts becoming procrastination. I've seen people spend years planning a business they never actually start. They've got notebooks full of ideas, business plans, logos and names and strategies. They watch hundreds of YouTube videos and listen to countless podcasts, read books and attended workshops. They've never actually spoken to a customer and they've never tested their idea. And they've never made the sale. And that's because there's something every successful entrepreneur eventually discovers. You will never know everything before you begin. In fact, some of the most valuable lessons in business can only be learned by doing. And your customers will teach you, your mistakes will teach you, and your successes will teach you, and the market will teach you. And no amount of planning can replace real experience. Think about learning to drive. You can read the highway code from cover to cover. You can watch videos about driving. You can understand every road sign. But until you sit behind the wheel, you're not really learning to drive. And business is exactly the same. There are some lessons you simply cannot learn until you're in the driver's seat. Now that doesn't mean rushing into things without thinking. It means accepting that learning and doing should happen together. Research, take action, learn, improve and repeat. And that's how businesses grow. Not because the owner knew everything on day one, but because they committed to becoming better every single day. So if you've been telling yourself, I'll start when I know enough, ask yourself this question instead. What could I learn if I simply took the first step? Because the truth is, you'll probably learn more in your first month of actually running a business than you will in a year of planning one. So don't let the pursuit of knowing everything stop you from discovering what you're truly capable of. Because knowledge is important, but experience is priceless. Let's finish with a myth that I think sits underneath almost every other one. I'm just not confident enough. I've heard people say, once I feel more confident, I'll launch my business. Or once I'm more confident, I'll put myself out there. Or once I'm more confident, I'll start networking, make videos or speak to customers. But here's the question I'd like you to think about. Where does confidence actually come from? Does it suddenly appear one morning? Do you wake up feeling fearless? Or does confidence come from doing something you've done before? I believe confidence is built, not found. Think back to the first time you drove a car, or your first day in a new job, or the first presentation you ever gave. Were you confident? Probably not. You were nervous, you questioned yourself, you wondered if you were good enough. But every time you did it, you became a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more capable, and a little bit more confident. Because business is no different. The entrepreneurs I've interviewed aren't fearless people. They all had moments of doubt. They've all questioned whether they were making the right decision. And they've all worried about whether customers would buy from them. The difference is, they didn't wait for confidence, they acted despite the uncertainty, and that's an important distinction. Confidence isn't about the starting point, it's the reward for taking action. Every phone call you make, every customer you speak to, every mistake you learn from, and every small success you achieve adds another brick to your confidence. So if you're waiting to feel completely ready, You could be waiting for a very long time. Instead, start before you feel ready. Start while you're still learning and start while you're still a little bit nervous, because that's exactly where almost every successful entrepreneur began. And if there's one message I hope you take away from today's video, it's this. The biggest difference between the people who build businesses and the people who only dream about them isn't intelligence or money or luck. It's that one group decides to begin before they have all the answers. They take that first step, then the next one and the next one, until one day they look back and realise just how far they've come. So don't wait for confidence, build it one action at a time. So before we finish, I want to leave you with one final thought. If you watch this video from beginning to end, there's a good chance you've recognised yourself in at least one of these myths. Maybe you've been waiting for the perfect idea, or maybe you've convinced yourself you don't have enough money, or maybe you've been telling yourself that now isn't the right time, that you need to know more, or that you just aren't confident enough yet. The question I'd encourage you to ask yourself isn't which myth is true, it's which myth have I been allowing to hold me back? Because once you identify it, you can start challenging it. You don't have to build £1 million business this year, you don't have to hand in your notice tomorrow, and you don't have to have everything figured out. You simply have to take the next step. And maybe that's speaking to your first potential customer, or maybe it's registering your business, or creating a social media page, or setting aside just 1 hour this week to work on your ambition. It doesn't have to be a giant leap, it just has to be a step in the right direction. And remember, every successful entrepreneur you admired started exactly where you are now, with an idea, a little uncertainty, and a decision to begin. They didn't know exactly how everything would work out, they just refused to let fear make the decision for them. So, here's my challenge for you. When this video finishes, don't just move on to the next one. Take 5 minutes, write down the one thing that's been stopping you from getting started. Then ask yourself, is that a genuine barrier, or is it just another myth I've been believing? You might be surprised by the answer. Now, if you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. Here at Ambition to Achieve, my goal is simple, to share practical advice, real conversations with entrepreneurs, and honest insights that help you move closer to your own ambitions. If there's a myth I haven't covered today, or there's something that's been holding you back, let me know in the comments below. I genuinely love to hear from you, and it might even inspire a future video. So thank you so much for watching, and please give this video a like. Until next time, keep believing in yourself, keep moving forward, and most importantly, keep putting your ambition into action.